Welcome to the Goat Show, the show where we celebrate and debate all things great. I am joined by my co-hosts, Fresh and Deezy. Gentlemen, good to see you. My name is ZiLLY, aka Ravine. Gentlemen, the world is perilous. The West is lost. The United States just elected its first socialist New York mayor. It's Sharia law. I am concerned. There's wars going on in Iran, in Ukraine, and Russia. And you know what? We might need to get out of here.
Where are we gonna go, man? Look, I've been looking Croatia. I think they just did like the whole country consecrated to Jesus. I'm thinking Croatia.
Nope. Where you want to go, Deezy?
Shit, bro. I need to buy one of them retired missile silos and go just deep underground. That's my best bet.
No. Nope. We're not doing that either.
So where are we going, bro? Where are we going?
All right. So just to give a little bit of background, I know we're building up. This is going to be an amazing interview today. We have an amazing guest. But just to give some background, when this Ukraine-Russia stuff started kicking off, during the Biden administration, I got a little concerned and was losing sleep. And I figure every goat out there, every man who's got his kingdom, every woman who's got her kingdom, whatever, needs a place to go just in case. So I started researching. And after all of my research of all the places you can go on Earth that possibly survive not only nuclear war, but maybe these cataclysms, all this shit. All right. If the world turns on its axis and it's on the equator, the place I found was Paraguay in South America. Now, you may be watching me and like, I don't know nothing about Paraguay. Well, that's totally cool because we are going to talk to someone today who's going to lay it all out and actually can help you out there. If you're thinking about going somewhere, getting a second residence somewhere, he can help you out big time. Before we do that, though, Fresh, what do the people out there got to do to survive?
You gotta like, subscribe, hit the bell, drop a comment, and you know what? Send it to somebody who wants to be an expat.
We'll get to our guest, Paul Kittson, in a second, but before then, a quick word from our sponsor.
Water, the source of life. It's been privatized, polluted, abused, and reused. Do you know what's in your water? Drugs, plastics, chemicals, pesticides. But there is hope. There are people working around the clock to make a difference. The solution is advanced filtration that not only removes toxins, but balances the pH in the water. Go to centuryh2o.com to tap into wellness.
We're back. And, our sponsor is all about that clean water. And in case you don't know, Paraguay has 2 large rivers with lots of clean water. So we'll get into that in a second, coming right out of that aquifer in South America. But let's get to our guest. Our guest today is Paul Kittson of Plan B Paraguay. Now, when I started researching Paraguay, he was one of the people that popped up. His videos are on YouTube. So if anybody out there, we'll put all his links in the show notes. If you're curious about checking out Paraguay, learning more about it, and then if you decide that you want to try for a residency or anything like that, I highly recommend Paul. He's someone that I'm working with personally. And I haven't done it yet, Paul, but I promise you, I will make it to Paraguay. I've just been dealing with family stuff here in the States. But Paul, welcome to the Goat Show. How are you doing today?
I'm good, mate. Thanks for having me today.
All right, Paul, let's get into it. So, like I said, did a lot of research, looked at Asia, looked at South America, all over the place, Europe, everywhere. I made a whole list of why, just for myself and my friends, of why Paraguay, if you are that type, the doomer type, the paranoid type, of why Paraguay is excellent. But also, if you're not, if you just are looking for another place, a cool place to be, that's a good sort of second, home base to wherever you are. So I guess, before we get into all that, I just want to ask you real quick, if you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Yeah, I think just to live forever, but then if I did want to just die, just be able to do it, because I don't know, all the other superpowers are good, but if you're only gonna live, like, another 20 years to enjoy it, like, who really gives a shit? So,
Right, right. Okay, well, there you go.
pretty basic, pretty basic.
You're gonna have to get that, that Neuralink. You're gonna have to get all those upgrades when that comes down there. I know Starlink's down in Paraguay, so, maybe Elon can hook it up, you know what I'm saying? Well, from superpowers to superhero origin stories, tell us about yourself. My understanding is that you are originally from Australia. What was it like growing up, and, what led you to kinda where you are today?
Yeah, so honestly, probably what first got me today is, if you, like, reverse time maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I was just like a normal dude, just trying to do what you're supposed to do to get ahead in life, right? You know, I was trying to save money, invest, all the boring stuff that over time builds up, and then, in the future, you're supposed to have a better future. What was a little bit different about me, though, is that my mum's American, even though I'm an Australian citizen. So I was a US citizen as well. And my whole life, I thought, that's an amazing thing. I got this other country. It's a cool country. I can go live there if I wanted to. But then as I started getting into it, I realized that if you're a US citizen and you're living overseas, I was buying index funds, all the boring investments. It's like, well, hang on, if you don't buy the American ones, you're like violating all these rules with the IRS and you're on the hook for all these taxes. And it led me down this rabbit hole where I was just doing what I thought was smart. But because I had this US passport, it was or potentially causing all this US tax difficulties. And that freaked me out at first. And I got into this rabbit hole of thinking, okay, well, what do I do? And I learned that, for some people, if you have another passport, it makes sense to potentially renounce the US citizenship and get rid of all these US tax obligations. So I was looking around, and at the time, I found this guy on YouTube called, have you heard of Nomad Capitalist?
Yes, yes. Definitely heard, yep.
Yeah, so he's like a big channel for the guys that haven't heard of him. He's also an ex-US citizen. He talks about going around the world, getting new passports, getting new residencies, investing in real estate, getting bank accounts so that no matter what happens, you're going to be safe. You're going to have options. And so from looking at his content, I was like, wow, there's these people that like, they don't just have one passport or two, they have three or they have five, and they have houses all around the world. And they're kind of like hacking this whole system of passports and residencies. They're living in one places, they're paying taxes in another places, they got investments in another place. And that opened me up to this world. And during this time, I was a crypto investor, and just like the States, like it doesn't pay to be a crypto investor in the West, especially in Australia, where I put in all this time and effort investing in this crypto. The government was sort of against us every step of the way. But when we actually make some gains, suddenly they want 50%. And that didn't feel right to me. So I was like, hang on, if I do have this ability to leave now and go to other countries that suit me better, well, why am I here just like getting taken advantage of? And so at the time, how it works, just like the States, Australia has a bit of an exit tax, which means when you leave, you basically have to pay out all the capital gains on your assets, right? Now, crypto had just crashed. And like, if I was going to leave and pay out all my gains, I might as well do it when my crypto is very low. So I desperately started looking at options. Now, 4 years ago, Panama was the sexy place to go to. Yeah, there wasn't really, no one talked about Paraguay. It was all about Panama. And because you could get a residency in Panama, it could be tax free, Latin country, fairly cheap. They use the dollar, it had all these benefits. Just as I was going to go to Panama, though, they changed the rules. And it went from being a $5,000 investment to a $200,000 real estate investment to get the residency. So I'm like, okay, well, there goes my plans. So I paid for this call with this guy online. It was like $500, right? This was in lockdown Australia, so I was like in Melbourne, which was fully locked down, just sitting on my bed, couldn't leave my house, just like on the call for 3 hours with this dude. And he went through like every single residency in the world. And then like, well, I mean, not everyone, but like the ones that suited me, right? And he brought up this place called Paraguay. And I never heard of Paraguay. I knew it was somewhere in America, or maybe South America, maybe Africa. I don't know. But on paper, it looked good. Very low taxes, low crime, and relatively safe for South America. Um, Very cheap standard of living. Latin culture, so it's kind of more similar to Western culture. So it ticks all these boxes, and also the residency was quite cheap. So I was like, I'm going to go there, and I'm going to give it a shot. It was about 3 grand at the time, and if it doesn't work out, I'll move on. I'll try something different. Now, what was so messed up at the time in Australia, you actually had to. This is how bad Australia was. You actually had to get a permission letter from the government to leave Australia because the lockdown was here where I was. So I met a guy online. We finally got our permission slip to leave our country, and we jumped on a plane to Paraguay. And I remember getting here and just going down the road and seeing like the streets are all messed up and it's looking like a developing country. And like I looked to my friend who came with me, I'm like, did we fuck up? Like, it's just a really dumb idea. Like, what are we doing here? Like, and we got here though. But then after a while, like the country started to grow on us, and we can go into it like the reasons like later. But eventually I realized, no, hang on, this is a hidden gem. Why isn't more people talking about this? They're talking about Medellin and Thailand and Mexico and I don't know, Eastern Europe, but no one's talking about Paraguay. And that's why when we realized this is something special, that's when we started the business and like started promoting Paraguay as a place people can move.
Yeah, man. It's I kind of had the same revelation, and again, just full disclosure for people watching, I have not visited yet, but it's in the cards. I have my plane ticket and everything. But that was one of the things when initially it was like I went literally continent by continent, and I was like, okay, what's the best country in each continent, and then I found your content, and there was some other content from some other people about Paraguay, because I think when people think of South America, they think of like these massive swings, right? These political swings. Like one moment it's hardcore communist whatever thing, next moment it's like fascist like whatever thing. But just up front with Paraguay, the first thing I realized is like, oh, this is one of the few countries in South America where I think for the last 100 years, right, it's been pretty kind of center right ish stable, and the crime has been like, I don't think there's been any real major sort of revolutions there. um it's very much an agricultural based country. So I don't know. Maybe you can give us a kind of a kind of summary of just sort of the maybe the economics and maybe the political atmosphere there, so that people who are saying, "Oh, South America is going to be this crazy thing," instead, it's like with Paraguay, it seems like everything's very stable.
Yeah, so I think when people think about South America, you tend to think of like all these kind of left wing, sort of communist failed states, right? Paraguay is, by far it's always been center right. Now, until the 90s, there was a dictatorship. The dictatorship was kind of more of a free market center right dictatorship that the country became democratic, but that culture and even the same party during the dictatorship that stayed in power. And basically, what's happened, it's just kind of been slowly in the background, just slowly getting better. It hasn't been, getting itself into debt. It hasn't been doing all these crazy social programs. It's just been slowly getting better, being a stable country, increasing like its economic prosperity. And I think what's happening, two things are happening, right? Paraguay's gotten to that point now where it's actually pretty good. And also the rest of South America, as well as many other countries in the world, are just falling apart, right? So then this country that was completely ignored, it's only got, I think it's 7 million people, now is like, well, hang on. This is actually pretty good. Like there's something here. And I think now it's starting to get some recognition. But even like you look in memes in Latin America and they're like, Paraguay, does this country even exist? Like it's even unknown in, South America. So
I mean, the thing about that though is, like I call Paraguay my bug out country, right? Like the shit goes down, like that's where I'm going. You want a quiet on the DL kind of country to go to when if you're in that mindset. If anybody out there that's watching is in that mindset of, wanting to have a place to escape to, for instance. I mean, yeah, you don't want it to be loud. You want it to be quiet. And from what I understand, not only just in terms of this place in the world, but literally the country itself, in South America is it's like one of the more quieter places, because not the stereotype, but South America is known to be like, colorful and loud and all this. And I think Paraguay is actually like pretty low key and quiet.
Mm. Yeah, and we can get into why that is, but like how we describe Paraguay is you're right, we call it the natural bunker, right? And let's break down why we call it that. It's for four main things. The first thing is Paraguay's food independent, right? So not only does it make more than enough food to feed the population here, it's one of its main exports, right? So if shit hits the fan, there's going to be food to feed everyone here. The second thing is Paraguay is water independent, which, they don't talk about that much now, but you hear people saying, the wars in the next 20 years are going to be fought over fresh water. And Paraguay shares a huge underground aquifer with Brazil and Argentina. And they say there's more water than that can ever be used in like 50 to 100 years here. So it's like there's a huge amount of fresh water. It doesn't have that issue. The third thing is on the border of Brazil, there's the Itapu Dam, which is one of the largest hydroelectric dams in the world. And this dam powers, it's like 95% of the energy in Paraguay is renewable. So it's energy independent. So there's not going to be squabbles over all these energy resources. And then the final thing is Paraguay is politically irrelevant. The truth is, no one gives a shit about Paraguay. Yeah, no one's going to waste a nuke on Paraguay. No one's going to bother invading Paraguay. There's nothing to take. There's a few cities and then there's cows and agriculture in the middle of the country. There's no oil or gold or anything to take. Yeah, so by that, it basically makes it, invisible, like geostrategically. And, that's what you want if things hit the fan. Like, again, with Panama, I love Panama. Even Trump's talking about the Panama Canal. Like, you don't want world leaders talking about your canal being a strategic asset, So, whereas here, like, we even joke with this whole shit in Iran. There's like memes going here, and it's like, the rest of the world's all burning and shit, and like people in Paraguay just like chilling, drinking a coffee, just living their life.
Yeah, man. Okay, I want to go through each one of those real quick, because again, yeah, those are all the things I discovered as well. So the first thing you brought up was the
Yeah, the food independence.
right, food independence. So my understanding is that the majority of the exports of the country are agriculture, but um, it mostly goes to the neighboring nations. It goes to Argentina, Brazil, Bolivia. So it's not like if something happens in Europe or some other place or the United States or whatever, it doesn't affect Paraguay's economy in terms of being able to provide fresh food to everybody. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not like dependent on that. It's not like all of a sudden you're going to starve.
Exactly. Like, even like there's the whole tariffs thing, right? And it's like, well, you know, do 300% tariffs on Paraguay if you like. Like, exports to the US is like 1.5% or something. We'll just be fine. Paraguay is part of what's called Mercosur, which is kind of like a mini EU, which is Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, and Paraguay. Their economies are very deeply interlinked. And so things can go on the rest of the world, but those are the main trading partners of Paraguay. So it's more insulated from stuff happening around the world.
I think that's a benefit too, because I have to assume the food supply in Paraguay, first of all, I mean, everybody talks about farm to table in the US, right? That's a big deal. Oh, farm to table. I'm assuming everything in Paraguay is farm to table, literally in the country. So, and from some of the interviews, just for anybody out there, if you go to Plan B Paraguay's YouTube channel, you have interviews with people that have come there and have used your program. And I was watching one where the dude was like, "Listen, like you can get a delicious fresh steak every single night, anytime you want in Paraguay. Like it's all straight from literally like down the road." So I like that was something I was kind of fascinated by. Is the food supply really fresh there? Is it really local?
Oh, yeah. I mean, even coming here, I had to make some adjustments, right? Because, like, in probably at the States, I'm sure Australia, you buy an apple, you can put it on your counter and it will last like a month. Here you buy an apple, you better eat that thing in like 5 days to a week or it's going bad. Like it's all local food, it's not industrialized. The other thing is, and on our Twitter and our YouTube, we really highlight this is the meat, right? So just like Argentina, one of the main exports from Paraguay is beef. And I would say it's one of the cheapest countries in the world where you can just get prime beef that's of a high quality. And it's also one of the Paraguay and Argentina have the highest consumption of like red meat in the world. And I'm sure your viewers, I am, like, we love that shit, right? These guys are on the carnivore diet, so that's a big benefit for people that live here as well.
Right, right. Well, and then, if we're talking about water, so my understanding is there's an aquifer, I forget what it's called, but there's a giant, I mean, it's the Amazon, like, and essentially it comes from the ocean, goes through the Amazonian aquifer. So the water that comes out is fresh, like really the purest water you can get. And then Paraguay has a natural rivers as its border, because I think it's, my understanding is Brazil's here, Argentina's here, Bolivia's here, Paraguay is landlocked in the middle, but it has natural borders with these two gigantic rivers that go around it. So there is fresh water there.
There is, although I mean I've seen those rivers. I don't know if I drink that water. I remember you were saying like this isn't like some Alaskan like pure. This is like if you look at Amazon water, it's brown. There's piranhas in it. There's probably some guy that like had a bath in it. Like, so I don't know if you'd want to drink that water, but definitely underground. There's that pure aquifer is accessible. So
Right, right. And then you brought up
yeah, the energy independence was the next one.
okay, so what's interesting about that is, and maybe you can speak on this. I think you did an interview with somebody who is there doing Bitcoin mining. So, and I think a lot of the reason there's another project called Morphware, not financial advice. I'm just saying they're down there. So it seems like a lot of people are going to where the dam is, and they're setting up their crypto operations there for mining and developing there. So there is sort of this crypto tech sector that seems to be forming. Can you speak more on that? Is that something that's really burgeoning in Paraguay right now?
Yeah, so what that comes down to is when Brazil and Paraguay created the dam, uh, Paraguay was allotted a certain percentage of the power from the dam, right? And they're barely using like, they're using, I'm just making out, they're using like a small fraction of the power that's allotted to them. So until recently, the only thing they could do is sell their power that they were allotted back to Brazil at a very, very cheap price. Right. So Paraguay's like, we got too much power. What can we do with it? And because of that, it's made it very attractive to crypto miners because they can set up their mining rigs here and buy the power at a very cheap price. So it doesn't even necessarily have to be, at the dam because the power from the dam, travels throughout the whole country. But yeah, there's a lot of crypto mining activity in Paraguay as well because of the cheap electricity.
And in general, how is Paraguay? How do they? I mean, the taxes are low. Like, can you maybe speak on that? How do they address taxes? How do they address expats that move there, and are they taxed for what they produce? Like, how does that all work? And then also with crypto, are there crypto taxes? Can you maybe speak on sort of the tax structure for anybody who moves to Paraguay from somewhere else?
Yeah, absolutely. So Paraguay is what's known as a territorial tax country. And what this means is that only income that is generated in Paraguay is taxable, right? That said as well, the highest rate of tax in Paraguay is 10%. Yeah. So even the local tax isn't that high. What is very attractive to a lot of people, particularly expats, digital nomads, people with online businesses, is they can come and live in Paraguay, but as their business and their operations is overseas, they can then earn, and then that money that they're earning isn't taxed in Paraguay. So it's effectively they're not paying any taxes. Now there is like a sales tax here. So people say, "Oh, expats don't pay taxes." It's not true. We pay taxes. We're buying stuff, we're helping the economy, but we're not paying taxes on our income, which is very different. With crypto stuff like trading, the mining, I'd have to double check, like if it would be categorized as a Paraguayan source income or it's in the cryptoverse or it isn't. But everything stuff like dividends, interest, trading of all that type. That's not taking place in Paraguay. That's in some exchange outside of Paraguay. So all those activities are not taxed in Paraguay.
Ah, interesting. Interesting. All right. We get into the hacks here for all this stuff. Um, and then I think what we were talking about with Paraguay being sort of more low key, but also kind of a more, I don't know what you would describe. Would you describe it as slower pace, more quiet pace? From everything I viewed on your channel and other channels, the attitude of the people is very welcoming and very kind. Can you speak on that? Like, um, what? How would you describe the Paraguayan people?
Yeah, so the local indigenous people here are called Guarani. And what's interesting is so in general, Latinos are quite friendly. Yeah, they're just wherever you go. That's constant. But I would say, I've visited many countries in Latin America, but I would say Paraguayans are almost that next level of friendliness. And I think there's a lot of uh, factors that come to this, but it's definitely the indigenous culture is still very alive today, and it was always a friendly culture. Even before the Spanish got here, and that warmth is still here today. People are just very friendly, very polite, very conflict averse here. It's so crazy. Like before I came to South America, I was pretty ignorant. I was like, Latinos, they're all kind of the same, but when you actually live in these countries, each country has a very different national kind of personality. And for example, when I crossed the border to Brazil, I feel like suddenly everyone's had like 3 cups of coffee and they're on roids. It's a lot more aggressive, like kind of dominant culture there. When I go to Argentina, everyone's kind of like whingy and artsy and kind of like that. It's kind of interesting how the cultures are different. But that is one of the, when I was talking about like after a week, how me and my friend were like, actually, this place is pretty good. A lot of it is the culture. Like when I was in Australia, I lived in Melbourne, which is a very large city. And a big city is always rush, rush. People are stressed. You're always in a hurry, and you don't realize, but you actually internalize the stress from all the people around you, from all your environment. When I came here, suddenly everyone's walking slowly, or slower, I should say. Everyone's talking more quietly. Like when you walk and you pass someone in the West, you almost got to be careful not to shoulder someone. Here, they sort of get out of the way. They're like, they're just gentle in the way they go about the world. And as you pick up, as a human, you pick up on vibes, you pick up on body language of the people around you. It started to make me like chill a little bit, because if everyone's in like a relaxed state, I'm like, oh, unconsciously I can relax a little bit more, and you start to pick up that vibe. Now there's obviously a benefit to that, and there's drawbacks as well. Like a Paraguayan's not going to rock up fucking 5 minutes early to do a job for you. They're going to do it at their own pace. But in terms of people just to be in a society with, I much like being in a society with people that are chill and friendly versus that are too anal and stressed out all the time.
Right, right.
I kind of have a question about the whole situation there. It sounds like it's the perfect place for corporations to come in and just wreak havoc. How how does the government handle corporations? Like think about, especially since it's agriculture and meat, like pesticides and all these extra shit that they're putting in different products. How does the government handle that? Do they protect the people? Are they pretty like aware of that? Do they keep corporate interests at bay? What's that vibe like?
I mean, I would say Paraguay is like, there's probably like a, I don't know, top 5% elite that like control everything. And then there's like the 95% of other people that are like relatively poor type people. And I would say there's already an elite in Paraguay that likes things the way they are. They have their own corporations, they're making their own money, they're doing very well. I think they're probably less likely to allow outsiders to come in and mess with that. So that's what I would say would insulate things from that.
I think it's like 5% of the country owns like the majority of the country, right? In terms of land and that type of thing. Is that accurate or is that
I think that's fair. Yeah, like I said, even more so than the West, there is a big divide between like the haves and the have-nots here, right? I'm not saying it's a perfect society. Um, and so yeah, like I said, like even just like the banking here, like some of the drawbacks, it's even hard just to bring money from overseas into the local banks here. So some stuff are difficult. They have their little own monopolies and kind of controls in some parts of the market here. So I imagine that's probably what keeps out competition.
I mean, my understanding is there's Starlink now. There's, there are things where if you are doing business in another country, you still have access to your resources. Especially if you have like a card with crypto on it or whatever. But you're saying that like the actual like invest. Well, let me ask you about that. Investing in Paraguay, buying real estate in Paraguay, is that challenging? Is it difficult, or is it starting to open up to people in the West who want to settle there?
In some ways, it's really easy. In some ways, it kind of sucks, right? So, in the way it's really easy is Paraguay has very strong private property rules. It's very free market like that. So if this is your property, this is your property. It's not like a 10-year lease or 100-year lease. It's not like a local has to own 51% like it is in Southeast Asia. This is yours. So that's the good side of things. The drawbacks is basically what happened is about, what do I want to say? It was like roughly 10 years ago, the US accused, Paraguay of being a money laundering country, and maybe it was, I don't know. But what they basically said is we're going to cut you off from Swift unless you follow all these stupid little rules that are like anti-money laundering, KYC, know your customer, all this stuff, right? And what that did is that it suddenly made it very difficult to bring money into Paraguay because you had to tick all these little boxes to make sure your money was like squeaky clean. Yeah. And that can be difficult. Like, me, a lot of my clients, if you have crypto money, for example, they won't let you bring that into banks here. Yeah. Because they don't consider that to be clean enough by their KYC standards. And then it makes it hard for you to buy a house, right? If you're a crypto dude, because that money, it's hard to bring that money into the economy. You have to show I had a regular job or I had this or that.
So like it's not considered income.
It's not considered income in Paraguay, but there's the government rules and there's the bank rules. For the banks in Paraguay that you're trying to buy a house, you have to pay a bank. They won't accept it. Now you can still do cash deals and all that, but it's not as easy in the US where I'm sure if you buy a house, you can just send the guy 100K, 200K, whatever it is, and buy the house.
The average is $425,000, I think, right now for a house in the United States.
Right? Yeah. I'm sure it's much higher. You guys do have mortgages though. Like that's whether that's good or bad, I don't know. Like here, there's barely even any mortgages. It's just you pay outright.
I think that might be a good thing. It can't be packaged up and sold.
Yeah, it stops like a bubble forming so much, I think, with the house prices.
When it comes to economics in Paraguay, um, do you find that they are welcoming of foreign investment? Like, I know that there's challenges with maybe getting money in, but do they want foreigners to come and invest, or is it really they try to keep everybody out and it really make it a Paraguayan?
I'm talking about the scale that so I think it was Fresh was saying, which is like, some Monsanto level huge agricultural company coming into Paraguay. That's probably hard to do. But guys at our scale that want to have just a regular business, there's no problem there. Even on the temporary residency, which is what you're going to start out at Ravine, you can start a business, you can own real estate, you can have a job. You can have banking. You can basically do all the things a regular Paraguayan can, just after submitting your documents. So in that way, they're very open. And the other thing is what Paraguay is like in a way, it feels like going back to the 90s a little bit, just in terms of the culture, but also the economy, the goods that are available, and so if entrepreneurs take an idea that worked well in the States or wherever and they bring it here, it's probably going to do very well because no one's even thought of that yet.
Is there a double side to that? Because at the same time, here in the States, you're going to have access to more resources. And now maybe you have to rely more on some kind of exports and stuff to build the products that you're looking for, or imports, I should say. Like, or you think you got enough locally to do the to build products from the ground up?
I mean, I guess it really depends on the business model, right? Like if you're doing lots of exports, you'd want to check that, you can get that stuff into the country relatively easy. I guess I was thinking more of like, service-based businesses or a restaurant or something like that, rather than manufacturing or something. But I'll give you just a little anecdote of, it's cute in a way, but just how backwards it can be here. So 9 months ago, like Starbucks created its first store in Asuncion I think it was about 9 months in the capital here. And literally for the first month, there was a line out the door of Starbucks, and everyone wanted to have a Starbucks. And even now, like a Starbucks still costs like $6 here, whatever it is, which is a huge amount of money. And it's like only like having a Starbucks here is like a status item, because only the richest people. And it's just for me, it's very like endearing that they wanted to be like a modern person. Like they see someone on Instagram walking down with a Starbucks. They wanted that, and I think there's a lot of services that the economy doesn't have here that there's that demand for or that yearning for.
But what's funny though is like I mean I don't know about coffee in Paraguay. I know that Argentina has yerba mate, but and maybe is there I don't know mate is a Paraguayan thing as well, but that's probably better than what you're going to get at Starbucks. I mean the local stuff you're going to get is going to be organic and fresh, right? I mean,
I mean, even for Starbucks, I imagine that they probably source locally for that store, like they probably source as locally as possible for that store because there's no reason to ship stuff from fucking Starbucks headquarters out to Paraguay. They buy the coffee from the country next door.
I mean, that's you imagine. Like, I think a lot of it comes from Colombia, at least down here. So they probably just ship it down from Colombia. Um, but what you're saying is right. And you mentioned mate. So mate is kind of like a tea-like drink that's very popular in Argentina. Paraguay has the same thing, except it's called tereré. And the difference is in Paraguay, you drink it cold with ice because this country is hot, whereas Argentina is more of a colder country. And then also because of that in the market, that's kind of like human beings need caffeine, right? And so the caffeine consumption here is more from tereré than it is from coffee. So there is a market here, but it's not huge.
well, let's talk about the weather. So my understanding of the weather there, I've been calling it when people ask me about it. When I tell my friends, I've been saying it's the Florida of South America. 'Cause I'm here in Jacksonville, Florida. Jacksonville is super sunny, hot as hell today, but also humid. Like a lot, it rains. It'll rain hard here, and then 20 minutes later, it'll be bright sunny skies. So, is that kind of the weather in Paraguay as well, or how would you describe the weather? And do you feel like it's uh, for somebody who may be coming to Paraguay, what type of person would enjoy the weather that Paraguay has?
So yeah, I would say, Paraguay sort of has a variety. We generally have hot and then we have hotter. But what I would say is it's quite comfortable. The main season that people struggle with is the summer here. So when I'll like to do it into Fahrenheit, it's like above 100. It can be, and not just for one day, like for 3 weeks straight. The maximum is above 100, and then at night it doesn't get that much cooler, really. So in Celsius, which I know better, it's like can be as high as 38, and then go down to 30 at night, right? And so that can be a challenge, like we can talk about what's not great about Paraguay.
Is it like super humid?
It's like it's moderate high. It's not like I haven't been to Florida, but it's not like Central America jungle humidity. It's not like sweltering, but it is humid.
That's a hot day. I mean, some humidity over 100 is hot. I'm out here in Arizona, so we get that where like the night doesn't go below 105 sometimes. So it's like 100 degrees for weeks straight, weeks, and but we don't have that humidity at all, really. Right now it's a little humid. We got some rain, but the humidity does add some levels to it.
Yeah, so I mean, it's like there's a few things you can do. First, you got to realize is energy's dirt cheap. So even poor families here have AC running nonstop. Yeah. Usually how people survive it, like maybe before 10 a.m., you go out, you do some stuff in the morning. From 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., you're in your office, you're working in aircon, and then maybe you go out at night. But only really dumbasses are walking around in the middle of the day in that heat, you know? The other thing is a lot of people go further south. So like the wealthy sort of elite of Paraguay, a lot of them go to Argentina in the summer. You have that option as well. But yeah, it's you adjust your life, but it is what it is. No place is perfect.
So let me. Some people say that I have friends in Brazil, and they don't even know about Paraguay, and I have friends in Argentina, and they don't know about Paraguay. And then some of my friends who are from that region are like, Paraguay is boring. That's what they say, which to me is like, yes, like please be boring. I don't want anybody to know anything. But uh, where Paraguay is situated, though, it's pretty easy to get to another city just by flight, right? You can take a quick flight to Rio or a quick flight to, Sao Paulo. I mean, can you speak on that? Is it easy if you live in Paraguay to just very quickly hop a plane and go to another, regional city?
Yeah. So in regards to that, Sao Paulo's 2 hours, Buenos Aires is 2 hours, Montevideo is about 2 hours. And you got yeah. So you got all the South American capitals available to you at a short flight. Um, that said, let's call a spade a spade. Asuncion is not Rio. Asuncion is not Buenos Aires. They're huge metropolises. Yeah. Asuncion has its own vibe, but you're not going to get that level of nightlife, that level of excitement.
Sorry, I'm looking at a photo of it right now because I'm like, what is this? Like, what does it look like? And it looks pretty like built, but it looks pretty built up. I mean, there's a bunch of skyscrapers. It's a coastal city, right? So, or is that a river that I'm looking at?
On the riverside. Yeah, on the river.
It's on the riverside. Okay.
Yeah, what you're finding is there's a few factors. Obviously, there's guys like me, like foreigners, expats that have moved here. But when Paraguayans talk about foreigners or expats coming here, they're not talking about gringos or Europeans, whatever. There's a shitload of people fleeing Brazil because it's going to shit. They're fleeing Argentina because it's through a very painful recovery right now. And they're like, hang on, there was this kind of backwater country that we never even thought about right nearby. But suddenly, this country we used to shit on, they have a better standard of living. There's less crime. People are happier. What am I doing here? And so there's a huge influx of people moving here, and the economy's booming. We're getting, like you said, high rises, new restaurants, new things to do. Like in the 4 years I've been here, there's just been a huge amount of progress, I would say. So, like you mentioned, your Brazilian friends, it's true, but they probably visited here 10 years ago, where it was very primitive, but it's kind of on that upward trajectory right now. So,
A lot of Spanish style architecture.
what's interesting here is that in Guarani culture, it's very taboo to cut down a tree. Yeah, so versus other Latin American countries, they can be kind of ugly concrete jungles. Whereas Asuncion would be a lot uglier, honestly, but there's trees everywhere. You'll get like a main road and there's a tree right in the middle of the road. They won't even cut it down. They just let it there. And what it does, it just makes the place a lot nicer. When you get to like a high rise and you look out, you just see a canopy of trees, right? And that's very appealing. But Asuncion itself, yeah, it's just a regular city in terms of architecture.
I wanted to go back a second because safety. I mean, again, when people think of Latin America, I think the word when I would tell 'em, or when I've been telling people about Paraguay, number one thing they keep saying like, oh, like South America's narco, South America's la. Can you speak on how safe Paraguay is and why has it not been swept up in sort of the narco trade or anything like that?
How's the police on all that? Like, is there a police presence? Like, what does the authority look like?
Yeah, it's funny. So there is police. I mean, I would say the only time the only time they're an issue is like, if you're driving while white, you might get pulled over and then just expect to give them like a $15 fine and move about your day. Yeah, that's probably so. The only time I have a negative interaction with them is occasionally if I'm driving and they pull me over. It's happened twice. When they're on the street, they're just chill. Um, there's not really, I think again, it's part of the culture. There's just not like the gangs and the crime like there is here. Maybe it's because there's not drugs or whatever. But yeah, it's usually just some chill, kind of chubby dude with a revolver just standing in the sun. That's kind of the police here, like you barely notice them. So
Well, I think in Paraguay, gun ownership is welcome, right? I mean, you can own a gun there.
Is it like open carry if you wanted to strap your rifle on your back and walk around there, or are they kind of weird about that?
it's not to that level. And recently they made a rule where temporary residents like yourself, Ravine, you won't be able to own a firearm until you get your permanent resident. And part of the reason they did that is a lot of Brazilians would come in here, getting the temporary residency, stocking up on guns, and then just going back to Brazil and shooting each other. But yes, you can own a fire.
You dang pesky Brazilians.
Yeah, I mean, I love Brazil, but that place is crazy. Like, yeah. You can own a firearm. There's no problem. It's usually though it's just in your own home. The open carry is a lot harder here. You can kind of do it, but you have to show that like you're a shop owner, and you need to for money. Or yeah, you gotta go through that sort of paperwork.
Because they don't really have the violence, It's like if they don't really have the violence that everyone needs to carry a gun around to protect themselves. If they see someone carrying a gun, they're like, "Why you got that?" Nobody, everyone's chill here, Like
Yeah, it's you. I mean, you don't. Yeah, exactly. Like it's more just like it's not really like just a violent culture. Like here's part of the reason. Like so we'll go a little bit historically, right? Um, so Argentina today, right? I don't know if you know. If you look at the racial mix of Argentina, it's mostly European descendants, right? Now, obviously, there was an indigenous population there, but the Spanish, when they arrived, it's terrible, but there was a genocide, and unfortunately, those people were wiped out, and now there's only European descendant people in Argentina. What's interesting is, those people that did that are the very same Spanish that came to Asuncion, right? They call Asuncion the mother of cities in a way, because first they founded the city in Asuncion, then they went south. The thing is, though, when you go to Asuncion, everyone's mestizo. The local people completely integrated with the Spanish, and now, it's a very mestizo country. And the reason is because when the Spanish came here, the Guarani was so chill and just non-violent that there was like, okay, cool, I guess we'll just live together. And then when they went south, there was obviously a lot more pushback, a lot more assertive people down there. And, what happened. So what I'm trying to say is it really highlights just a different culture of the indigenous people and how that reflects through the society today. Like even in Paraguay, there's a thing where, like, let's say you're pissed off at someone, right? You usually don't just like tell it to their face and like let them have it. Usually you talk to someone else and then they'll go and then they'll talk to that person because they're so polite and conflict avoidant. They don't even want that. Like I've maybe seen one or two fights in the 4 years I've been here. Like very rarely there's open conflict because it's just not in the culture.
Well, Ravine, you almost had me, bro. But I can't even tell people when they're wrong. You know I can't go to Paraguay, bro. I'm not allowed to be there, bro. Yeah, that's let me tell somebody else to tell you, bro. You go be the stick. That's Paraguay.
Well, there's also another history lesson. I thought this was fascinating. Is the War of Triple Alliance? Maybe we can touch on that real quick. My understanding is, I mean, it was a pretty brutal war, but basically, I think Bolivia, Argentina, and Brazil ganged up on Paraguay. I'm not sure what kicked it off, but it was a brutal war. A lot of the men, I think, I don't know, it was a huge proportion of the men died in that war. This is at the turn of the century. And then I think it was Rutherford B. Hayes, the American president, that negotiated Paraguay's existence. I don't. Again, we got to look it up maybe, but maybe can you do you know about that? Can you talk about that and like what happened?
Yeah. Yeah, 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 and I think uh, that war still shapes society today, right? So, and to the historians, I might butcher it a little. I apologize, but basically, my understanding is the War of the Triple Alliance was Paraguay versus eventually Brazil, Uruguay, and Argentina at the same time. At that stage, though, Paraguay was a much larger, more powerful country. It had this dictator running the country at the end, and he's like, you know what? We're not going to surrender. We're just going to keep fighting, right? And they fought these three countries simultaneously until 90% of the adult male population was wiped out. Like there's even statues here. It's kind of fucked up where it's like it got so bad that they even dressed up some like children in army soldiers and just like sent them to battle. There's like statues, like I said, of like kids and like women with pitchforks because they're like the only ones like left to fight, right? And even there's like they in Paraguay they say I think it's like vencer o muerte, like victory or death. Like there's still that in the culture today. But what happened in eventually when there was peace is you basically had a society where there was hardly any males left. And so there, again, there's all these memes. It's like imagine you're a guy in like 1890 or whatever it is, and literally every guy had like 8 or 5 to 8 wives.
Oh shit! All right.
Yeah, and so what it's done, and I don't like to mention this so much because I don't want to like incentivize just like oh just come to Paraguay to date and all that, but it basically created a culture where the women here try really hard because they kind of felt like they have to, and the men don't really try that hard at all. So again, there's like you see a meme, but it's like who she's crying about, and you see like this picture of this Latina girl, beautiful, bawling her eyes out, and it's like the guy she's crying about. It's like this fat, dumpy dude, like, and that exists here. Like it's crazy just how much like the regular Paraguayan guy can get away with. And so just that whole thing of, at least in terms of cultural dynamics, there was, and that set the country back like 40 years. They basically had to completely repopulate slowly and build themselves up. And that's part of the reason why it was, backwards for a long time, is they were still recovering from that particular war.
Yeah, and then where did Rutherford B. Hayes come out? Like, how did he? I don't even know like how that was negotiated or whatever. But
I don't know I remember that name, but I don't know exactly the American perspective in that. Yeah, I have to look up on Wikipedia.
yeah, I don't. We'll have to look that up. But there's I mean, there's a region in Paraguay, like a state, and it's named Rutherford B. Hayes. So, yeah, 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 after him. So uh, I'm not sure. I don't know, DZ, if you're if you got that yet or not.
He played a significant role in arbitrating a territorial dispute between Paraguay and Argentina after the war. So he didn't do anything during the war, but afterwards, when they couldn't agree on the ownership of Chaco Boreal, a vast wilderness area between the Rio Verde and a branch of the Rio Pilcomayo. I don't know how that's pronounced. This area is roughly 60% of Paraguay's present territory, was claimed by Argentina based on the Treaty of the Triple Alliance, which had secret clauses favoring Argentine territorial gains. Brazil, however, opposed the full claim to prevent the rival from dominating the region, and Hayes was the arbiter because United States had a neutral stance.
Yeah, so like Hayes ruled, he legislated over the control of Gran Chaco, right? So because he gave them like I think it was like 60% more land, or 60% of the disputed land, which they were supposed to get none of. Like Argentina was supposed to take it all. He ruled in favor of them, and now they like honor him. But he's actually never been to Paraguay.
Oh, really? He wasn't even there.
Hayes never visited Paraguay, but arbitrating post-war land claims, giving Paraguay control of the Gran Chaco, he became a symbol of justice and survival. The nation's recognition through places names, traditions, teams, stamps, and more turns him into one of Paraguay's most revered foreign figures.
The decision is celebrated in Paraguay, where Department Presidente Hayes, a town, Via Hayes, a museum, and even a soccer team are named in his honor. And November 12th is a provincial holiday in Via Hayes.
Hey, all right, everybody, we're gonna toast Rutherford B. Hayes. Cheers to
Cheers.
you.
The first time the U.S. didn't drop bombs to settle a dispute.
We could learn a thing or
Hey.
two from Rutherford B. Hayes' example.
Paraguay's
Shout
pretty
out.
chill with the US. I feel the US never got this far south, so the countries down here are like, whatever.
Yeah. I
But,
mean, yeah, I think Ivanka Trump visited, or not
really?
Ivanka. Yeah, yeah, I think she went. No, his daughter, right? Ivanka or Ivana?
Okay.
Ivanka. Yeah,
But during
I
this
think she
presidency or the previous
last
one?
during his first term, I think she went down there
Okay.
and visited, and maybe it was a
Ah,
South American tour or something. I remember seeing that, but uh, I mean, let's just talk about this. The last thing before we get into everything you're doing with Plan B Paraguay. I mean, you brought it
yeah.
up, the women. I mean, I know that. Let's just be real. In the West here, it's tough out here for men.
Right. Yeah.
It's tough out here for women too, but really, it's tough out here for men. Like, I
No,
mean, a
but you
lot of
know
guys.
what? Okay. Um, so yeah, I mean, like, here's the thing, right? Like, I don't want to promote Paraguay as necessarily that's what it's all about. The last thing I'd want for this place is to be another Medellin where you get too many guys coming down there just looking for that, and it can warp the culture and it can cause a lot of issues. Here's what I will say though is that I mean, the dating is so like terrible in the West, wherever you are right now, you're going to do a lot better here. Yeah. And like, even for me, it can also it can be very simple economics. Like, I'll explain this, right? Like, women are looking for all sorts of shit, whatever, but also one thing that is very important is also, the economic situation of a man, right? And so if the average Paraguayan dude earns 10K US a year, and you come here, maybe you're a digital marketer, I don't know, earning 50K a year, maybe you're earning more. Your earnings is a multiple of 2 to 20 of a local dude. And they know that, right? Yeah. So also in general, Westerners have a good reputation here. So you'll find your dating prospects are a lot better here than what it would be back home. You also find that a lot of the woke stuff isn't really tolerated here. And so you won't run into kind of the weird gender dynamics and all that here. You're going to have all the nice stuff, a feminine girl, a traditional girl, all that good stuff. But then also don't expect for a second that she's going to pay for a single thing, because she won't, and if you even ask her, like, you'll be in trouble. Like, but it kind of shocked me, because like, you come here and you can talk to like a beautiful girl, and they don't have the pretentiousness or as they would back home. And so what can happen, at least what happened to me, happened to my friends. I got here, it was after coronavirus, so I was a bit cooped up, but you go a little bit crazy on the apps. You're dating all these girls. You're literally like, you can set up a date every night of the week, which sounds cool, but then it becomes like a second time job, especially when you're dealing with Latinas. They're always texting you. They want your attention. Eventually you do that. Eventually you burn out. You find a nice girl, hopefully, and then you sort of settle down. So yes, I would say the dating is a lot better here, but I don't want this to just be like another like place where everyone comes for a weekend, tries to bang a chick, and then leaves. The other thing I was going to say is, it sounds bad, but when Western guys come down here, they find it easy. When Western women come down here, they struggle. Yeah. And to me, like, at least the way I see it, it shows that the market is messed up in our, like, obviously we're trying harder in our country because we can leave and we do well. When they leave, no one's interested, and like, when a potential client or someone asks me and they're like, how's my dating? they're going to struggle because they're up against, local girls that, like, there's a lot of pressure. It's a traditional society. So you got to be pretty, you got to do all that, you got to remain slim. They got to deal with all that, and they don't usually want to date locals because locals might not have the money. They only want to date expats, but they're competing against all the Latina girls, and they got no chance. So it usually doesn't work out well for them. It usually ends in frustration.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. And well, I mean, part of Paraguayan culture, I think, is it's very Catholic, though, right? So there's a sort of traditional religious kind of aspect to Paraguayan culture. Could you kind of speak on that in terms of sort of the moral kind of the moral makeup of Paraguay?
Yeah, I mean, it's Catholic, but it's like South American Catholic, so they still party and hook up and all that stuff, but there is a moral foundation there where um, the family unit is still very important here. And what's kind of cool, you come here, you go to like an outdoor eatery, you see children running around screaming, like families congregating. That's why, like when I say it feels like going back to the 90s, because I remember that as a kid. Whereas I feel in the West, or at least in Australia, everyone's like hyper protective and put the kids in a little cage over here. And, it's not like that here. It's incredibly family orientated here, which is good and bad. Um, the other thing that's interesting, just because you made me remember a point, is the average age here. And I think this goes back to why I think this country has a future and why I think this country is a good hedge. So, what's happening in the West and other countries? There's too many old people relative to young people, right? So, when I left Australia, I Googled what's the average age of Australia? It's 38. Then I Googled what's the average age in Paraguay? It's 28. And when you come here, you see that like people look young, well, people look healthy, but it's really just because everyone's 10 years younger on average. There is old people, but there's not many. There's young families with lots of kids. And if you want a society to have a future, you need to have a healthy population pyramid. It needs to look like this. It can't look like this. And so when I'm an old man, I'm going to have my own kids. It's nice to know there's going to be another generation to look after us, rather than in the West where there's too many old people and they're squeezing the next generation because there's not enough resources to support them in retirement.
Yeah, I mean that's something Elon keeps talking about, and seems to be a trend, not just in Western cultures. Also, it seems like Asia's having the same challenges. At least certain countries in Asia, Japan, Korea. Um, that's great, man. Okay, well, if that all sounds enticing to whoever, if you're still watching, and that all sounds amazing to you, which it sounds amazing to me, uh, tell us about Plan B Paraguay, your company. What services do you provide for people that are interested in maybe attaining a residency in Paraguay?
Yeah, so basically, the good news is the residency process is quite simple in Paraguay. So let's just tell your listeners how that works. So for most people, you're going to need your birth certificate with something called an apostille. I'll quickly explain what an apostille. An apostille is like a stamp that your government will put on a document so that another country, in this case Paraguay, can accept it. Yeah. So you get your birth certificate with an apostille. You will need a clean criminal record check with an apostille. I'm sorry, guys, I got criminal records. It's probably not going to fly here. Apparently, Mexico's more chill. If you want to go to another place, try them.
That's two strikes for me, baby. That's two strikes. I can't. I'm not even allowed in. I'm not even allowed in, bro.
I mean, if you want to share, it depends. It depends what level it is. Like if it's something minor, it can be cool. If it's anyway, it depends.
My record currently only contains a DUI.
Oh, that's fine. No, DUI is fine. I'm talking about stuff like more like drugs or particularly violent crimes. They're not going to like it. DUI is chill. You can take care of a DUI.
We're back, Fred. You got you back, man. We're going.
You're back in. You're in the race, mate. You're in the race. So then, if you're married, you need like a marriage certificate, and if you got a new passport, you need your certificate of citizenship. But really, besides those basics, you get that stuff. You come here for a week in Asuncion. We submit your documents, and then you're good to go. Right? It takes about 3 months before you actually get your residency cards and you're official, but you can live here in the meantime. And it's as simple as that. So what we get a lot of people, I'm assuming your viewers are mainly from the States. Generally, we get people from the States. They come here for a week. They do the process. They head back to the States because maybe for whatever reason they don't want to leave yet. They're still doing their thing there, which is cool. We take care of everything and we mail them their residency cards roughly 3 months later. And then that's why it really is a plan B, because let's say shit hits the fan in the States, whatever it is, whatever your conspiracy theory is, if that happens, you can be like, okay, I'm getting out of here. I'm coming down. And, there's a safe country. I already know people. I know Paul. I can get by. My family's going to be safe. I'm going to say your second question was, what's plan B? So what we found is, like, when I came here, I got someone to do the residency, which was good, but I love Latinos. I really do. My girlfriend's Latino, but with something like this, sometimes you need a bit more professionalism. You need someone where when you send an email, you're going to get a response. When you send a text, you're going to get a response. It's going to happen quick. They're going to communicate. And Paraguayans are amazing, but communication, timelines, doing all that, sometimes it doesn't quite fit. And it can be very scary and frustrating when you moved your whole life to the other side of the world and you're like, what's going on? Is this dude going to email me or whatever? So we saw, well, let's bring a Western level of service to this, and then we'll offer it to people. The other thing is, Paraguay is great, but you're going to deal with what's good and bad is that no one here speaks English. Yeah. They say like roughly 5%, which sucks at first because most of us can only speak English, but then it's good because it's not one of these weird copy paste expat places like Mexico or Medellin where everyone's speaking English and half the people are expats. When you come here, you're living in like a local, you're being treated like a local, you're not in a weird expat bubble. But the difficulty is when you're trying to set up your life, you're trying to create a bank account, you're trying to get a real estate, a rental, you need someone to help you with all that. So where we do is we're like a relocation service. We're a community. We help people with that ongoing process to set up their life here.
Do you recommend people know Spanish or learn Spanish before coming to Paraguay, or do you feel like that if you're like me, you're interested in setting up sort of a second home base, can you get by just by living in Asuncion and being in the expat community there? What do you recommend for people that come down there?
I don't think you need to know Spanish, but I think it's important to have the desire to eventually learn. Yeah. So what almost everyone does, you go on Duolingo for 6 months before, you think you've learned something, you come here and none of it works at all and you freak out. Right. But you'll learn the Spanish firstly just to navigate life, how to buy stuff, how to get a taxi, pay at a restaurant. And then what I would hope is that you slowly learn the language over time. Because in the same way, right? Like I was thinking about it. When I was in Australia, if there was some Chinese guy and he's lived in Australia 3 years and he can't speak English, I'd be pissed. I'd be like, what is he even doing? This is like, go home if you're not going to learn English. And I feel that same way about people coming here. If you come in here, they don't expect you to be fluent day one, but try to learn, at least for respect for the local people. But yeah, most people, I'd say 90% of my guys can barely speak Spanish when they get here and they figure it out.
I'm reading it's also like its own specific type of Spanish too. It's not necessarily like Spanish from Spain or Spanish from Mexico.
But like any Spanish speaking country, bro, like they'll be able to understand you. Like even if I go and I'm speaking Portuguese to them, they're going to understand. Like the language is close enough that we'll be able to communicate.
But he is making a good point here. And so what he's saying is Paraguay actually has two national languages. It has Spanish and it has Guarani. So that's the indigenous language still. And so the majority of people here, well, it depends where you are. In Asuncion, when someone's talking to you, it's like 95% Spanish, 5% Guarani slang that they'll put in. So me, I only know Spanish. I haven't bothered learning Guarani and I get by. But when you go to more rural areas, the percentage of Guarani versus Spanish changes. Yeah. The mixture of the two languages is called Jopara, and that's what they speak. But to keep it simple, if you just learn Spanish, you're going to get by. You don't have to learn Guarani.
One thing that I felt like, and because I looked at some different services there, and the reason I decided to go with you is because you also, it's not just, I think some of these other services you get to Paraguay, they'll do the residency, but then you're kind of on your own, to figure out other stuff. And from reading everything, and again, if you go to the YouTube, you can see the people you interview who are your clients. You actually help people after that process, and you've kind of put together this community of expats that then becomes a resource for people. Can you speak on that, like how, that sort of community that you've developed and how that works?
Yeah, so I mean, it's like even in my own experience, right? Like, when I first got here, I'd like go to, I don't know, I'd go to Uruguay for a week or I'd go to Colombia for a week. And it's great. But when you're by yourself, you might date a few chicks on Tinder, whatever, that's cool, but you're kind of alone. And at least for me, I started to feel depressed. Like I needed to have other people around me. And I realized so much of an experience changes if you have people around you or community versus just doing it on your own, hanging out by yourself. And so when our people come here, we have dinners every week. We have like a coffee meetup every week. So we introduce people to the community. People click with someone that's kind of similar to them in the community, and then they have a group. They have a guy to hang out with, or someone to hang out with, someone to share the experience with. It can completely change your feeling of a place just based on that. Then the other thing is like at first it was just me and like my team giving people advice. But when we created this big WhatsApp group and people started just answering each other's questions and it grew something bigger than me. And now there's like it's kind of the lame self-help thing. Now it's like a mastermind group where everyone's sort of sharing information. And there's a lot of value there because everyone goes through the roughly same expat or immigrant experience when you're here. And then when you can reach out to people that have already solved that issue you have, it just speeds up your process and makes the transition so much easier.
And then I think the other thing is you actively help people who want to, you connect people that are interested in sort of business and entrepreneurship as well. Can you speak on that, sort of how you connect entrepreneurs who want to come to Paraguay and set up shop?
Well, I I know like different local Paraguayans can help with that. So whether it's, a guy that can help basically incorporate you or accounting or helping you with your banking. So there's that side of thing. But it's also just our community is a lot of people come here that already have a business or want to start a business. So when I hear someone, oh, you're interested in that, I know this guy in the community, I'll introduce you. That's usually how it works. Yeah. So it's just purely introducing people. Like I know a little about business here, but that's not really, I'm not an expert on that. No.
Right, right. I know that there's some rural community type projects that are happening, and I don't know how many of those are legit or weird or whatever, but
Well, there's a big one called Paradiso Verde, right? And you can look at it online. It's kind of a semi-utopian community of very, I'm definitely a sort of right-wing, more libertarian guy, but I would say these are, the most extreme of that, living rurally, and you can go there, and it's kind of an interesting place. But what I would say is just because someone might share your views politically doesn't necessarily mean you want to hang out with them or they're cool people. So it seems like it's a very tumultuous place with very strong personalities, and you can investigate it, but it is kind of interesting. In the middle of nowhere, there's this little community where people can come and live according to their own values. So yeah, and Paraguay is kind of famous for that. Like what's kind of interesting is so Paraguay has the only Australian colony in it. So Australia is a colony itself of England, but there was actually Australians that left like 150 years ago, and they formed a colony in Paraguay called Nueva Australiana or Nueva Australia. And so it has this history just for hundreds of years, people come here and starting these little utopian communities. It's just kind of a weird thing here. So you get all sorts. You get Mennonites and religious people in the north of the country. Are you familiar with the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche?
On some level, yeah. I mean, the name and you know, the yeah.
Okay, well, he's kind of like a famous philosopher. His Some people say he inspired the Nazis. I don't know. It depends. You can think of that how you like. But his sister came down here and like formed this whole German sort of community near. So it's kind of interesting. Paraguay's had that history of different people coming here and trying to start something new.
Do you see that a lot? Like, do you see that a lot in the community? Like, do you see like some of the Australian settlers that their family's been here? Do you see that still or no?
That settlement kind of failed because apparently what happened is half the settlement wanted to marry local women and that was considered sinful, and then the other half didn't, and eventually they just got integrated into the regular society. But definitely you see like sometimes you see Mennonites, and like you'll be in Paraguay and there'll be like some German person wearing clothes from like the 1930s or whatever, like real farm type stuff. And yeah, so you do see it a little bit, but it's also they kind of keep to themselves. These communities, they're probably not going to visit Asuncion so much.
Right, right. Uh, there's a lot of Koreans, from my understanding, and there's a Korean community in Paraguay and Korean restaurants and stuff like that. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, there's Koreans like there's this whole, not just Paraguay, but there's this whole history of like Asian immigration to South America. Like there's lots of Japanese here and also in Brazil and Peru. So you get like smaller ethnic communities, which is kind of funny because you see like an Asian dude and he's talking like completely Paraguayan Spanish. It's like a little bit jarring at first. But actually, what is interesting here, going to just to bring it up, going to race is so another kind of quirky thing is like a dictator in the past. He had this kind of rule where he made it so that people weren't allowed to marry their own race, right? So indigenous people had to marry, the Spanish had to marry indigenous. And what it's done is that the racial mix here, almost everyone is mestizo. I would say 95% is some mix of mestizo. Yeah, and so I think in terms of harmony, like there's not really necessarily racism here because there's classism, but because everyone's the same race in a way, I think it makes everyone on like an equal footing. And there was no slavery here traditionally as well. Whereas if you go to other countries where there's lots of that, it can be more tumultuous, I would say. But it's just interesting when you go here, like you look around, everyone's mestizo.
That's cool, man. It's so fascinating. Um, what are your thoughts on the future of Paraguay? I mean, is it on the up? Is it? Do you see? I mean, you have a unique perspective. Are there a lot more expats coming into the country? Is there more entrepreneurship? What's your take on Paraguay's future?
Yeah, it is. And it's funny, I got mixed feelings because, obviously my business invites expats here. But the last thing I want is the country just to be, overwhelmed with expats and lose what it already is. Because I feel there's like an authenticness here. There's almost like a naivete of that's just so innocent. Like when they meet an expat, they're like I remember so many people saying, why did you come to Paraguay? That's so interesting. Like who would like they're just shocked and like happy that someone would come to choose their country. And I'd hate it from go to that to places like, Colombia or Mexico where there's anti-expat protests or in Madrid, So um, I think the country has I think it has a very bright future. I just want the growth to be sustainable and over time. I don't want the place to necessarily get flooded. Um, I think you're going to see that here.
I think you were saying that it's becoming more challenging for, like, the government's tightening up a little bit on being able to offer residences. Is that the?
I think that's the case. So, for example, 2 years ago, there was 5,000 residency applications. Last year was 25,000, so it was a fivefold increase. And this year we're in July and they say it's like 15,000 already. So we can assume it's going to be 30,000. So how I see it is like when I said to my friend, this place is too good, how come no one's speaking about it? Well, obviously people are starting to speak about it. And I kind of feel like Paraguay is kind of like the ugly chick that's turned pretty, but she doesn't know she's pretty yet. Yeah, so she's still got an amazing personality. But if eventually everyone keeps spoiling her and all that, that might change and she might start getting a little bit bitchy. And I think what's going to happen is the government's probably going to tighten up the residency process a bit because they're like, if we're so popular, let's like governments are inherently selfish, right? They're like, let's extract more out of these people. What I think it's going to look like is right now, it's really cool because you can come here, get the temporary residency. You don't even have to spend any time here until 2 years later when you convert it to a permanent residency. A lot of these residency programs, you have to be there 6 months, a year, or you're going to lose it. Here you can get it. And that's why Americans like it. They pick it up, they go live in the States, and it's like they use it if they need it. Eventually, the government's going to be like, no, 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 we need you here spending money if you want this residency. And I think they'll slowly increase the amount of time they want you here for you to maintain it. That's where I see it's going.
Got it. Got it. All right. Well, y'all watching out there, if you want to see the wonders of Paraguay, better get on a plane. Don't do like me. Don't keep pushing that plane ticket.
You know what you need to
Yeah.
ask me though? You need to ask me what's bad about the place or else it just
All
sounds
right.
like I'm glazing it.
All right. Let's.
You know?
What's bad, man? It sounds pretty
Yeah,
dang good to me. But tell
yeah,
tell
yeah.
us
No,
what's the.
I don't want to. I want people to come in with a realistic opinion. So we mentioned the heat, right? I'd say that's not good. The main thing that kind of sucks about Paraguay is so there's very little taxes, which is cool, but then that means the infrastructure here sucks, right?
Mm,
Specifically, the roads are kind of crappy. Yeah,
mm,
so the in the west, it's nice, smooth road, whatever. That's not here. There's going to be potholes. It's going to be a lot rougher ride. Like here,
right.
it's common for people to have big trucks like SUVs because they are smoother on the roads here.
Mm,
Also, you get like the ugly cables like above here. Like just in general, public services are kind of crap. It's even so funny, like, well, not so funny. I guess it's depending on your perspective, but like the fire department here it's so libertarian and low taxes here. The fire department runs off charity. Yeah. So there's
mm,
no actual
right.
government fire department. So you'll be at the light stopping, and there'll be a guy in a fire suit with like a little bucket trying to get money. Yeah. Like,
Right.
because that's the only way they fund the public services here, which is kind of cool because taxes are low. But if like your house is burning, you probably want a guy with the latest gear.
Right. Right. Is
So
is
that's
there
something.
like are there
Go ahead.
private options for fire defense and stuff like that, or is
That's a
it? I
good
mean,
question. I'm not sure. Yeah, potentially. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. That's interesting.
I mean,
But
back in, turn of the
there you
century
go.
America, it was like you would just your insurance would be your fire agency, I guess. But
Yeah, it reminds me
um
of like gang. Have you seen Gangs in New York where all the
yeah,
fire?
yeah.
Yeah, it's like rival ones. It reminds me of that. Yeah, because apparently there's even dodgy ones. Like they just like they're not even that good. They're just trying to be like collect as much money as possible. Like I
Right.
remember my girl saying, "Oh, you see the brown ones, like in the brown fire suits. They're the shitty ones. Never give them money. Only give money to the ones in the yellow suits." I'm like, okay, well, whatever. It's too complicated. So
What
also I'd say, yeah, it's just a developing country in some respects. And so you're not going to get the same level of convenience or customer service or that you are going to get in the States. Like we can crap on the States or Australia, but things are efficient. People are generally, I'd say, more hardworking, maybe a little bit more honest than what you're going to get here. So
would you say, I mean, obviously in the rural areas, anywhere you go, there's a certain level of poverty, but would you say like in Asuncion, is Asuncion a nice city, or are there areas where there's, abject poverty? Like how would you describe sort of
yeah,
the makeup of
yeah, it's definitely
it?
more extremes of wealth and poverty here. Asuncion, like realistically, and like when you come here, I'll send you a map of Asuncion. I'll be like, just stay in this area. Yeah. Because there's a
Hmm.
really nice bubble in the middle. And
Hmm.
then the rest of the areas is more developing and it's more rough. Yeah.
Hmm.
And then you can get to like, if you go further out, you can almost get to like the favelas of Asuncion where, you don't want to be walking there at night necessarily, that particular part. So
Got it.
um, it's a wide range. Where you're probably going to live will be nice, but the whole country isn't nice, no.
What's it like for weed smokers?
It's kind of like, I don't know if it's completely legalized yet, but it's also no one gives a shit. So you walk around, you can smell weed smoke. They even have this thing where you can meet in the park and somehow legally buy weed once a month. So if you do have that hobby, it's going to be fine here. That said, it's not going to be to the level of the States of where you guys have all sorts of like, I don't know, weed cookies and different devices and all that. It's probably just going to be like actual weed. So it's going to be far more simplistic.
I like it like this, man. I like it like this.
Okay, well, they have that. I have seen that. Yeah, definitely.
We got to call Dr. Moonrocks. That we interviewed Dr. Moonrocks. We'll get we got to get a Paraguay division.
I actually remember like years ago, there was like a Vice documentary on like the shittest types of weeds in the world. And one of the shittest types of weed was called the Paraguayo. Yeah, it was like known for being particularly bad. So hopefully it's improved.
3 strikes, brother. That's it. I'm going to Croatia, bro.
He's gone. He's gonna leave now.
I have a question about the passport. And like you said, did you renounce your citizenship? You said, is that something that you did?
I did. My American citizenship, yeah.
Yeah. So, but are you still an Australian citizen?
Yeah, so when you renounce your US citizenship, they won't let you just have no passport. Yeah, you have to show that you have a backup passport. And so because I had the Aussie one, they let me do it.
Got it. What? Okay. So, Could you like? Do you have a passport from Paraguay now? Is that like how it works?
I'm going for it, but it's kind of, I don't know if I'm going to get it. Like, I look at the stats, right? So basically, I was looking like over the past couple of years, they're giving out like 50 to 100 passports a year. So I'm going to put my hat in the race. But if 5,000 people got a residency, and then 3 years later you can apply. If 3 years later 100 got them, well, there's a disconnect. Yeah. So at least in Paraguay, I don't guarantee people a passport. I'll tell you what I am doing though. So in Brazil, like me and my girl are trying for a kid, and eventually when we have a kid, we're actually just going to cross the border and have it in Brazil. Yeah. And the reason, if you have a child in Brazil, the child is immediately a Brazilian citizen. The parents are immediately permanent residents. And then if you live in Brazil 18 months, you can then get the Brazilian passport. So I think with me, I'm probably going to have a Brazilian passport before I get a Paraguayan one, even though I'm Plan B Paraguay, just because it's a far simpler system. So that's my plan there.
And then, so once you have a passport from one of those countries, you could technically renounce your Australian citizenship, then, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So then, once that happens, how hard would it be to travel to different places once you're no longer a citizen of either of those places? Is it more difficult to travel? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so there's like a website called the Passport Index, which shows you like how many countries you can go to visa free. So obviously, US, Australia, very strong passports. Brazil's like a middle rank passport. You can go to most places, but some places are going to need a visa. Usually, because I've had like ex Americans come through, and usually what they do, you can buy the Turkish passport. So I've had people that got the Turkish one renounced to American, or a lot of the Caribbean islands. I don't know if you know, but you can buy passports from there, like St. Kitts and Nevis. So I've had a couple people come through. They got that passport and then renounced the US. But like those Caribbean passports, they're kind of weak. So you'll be struggling to travel on them.
Well, listen, man, this has been fantastic conversation. I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're busy. You're doing a lot down there to talk to us and to our audience about something that may seem kind of random, but is something that I think it's important to think about. You never know what's going to happen in the world. There's a lot happening, everywhere, and there's seems to be a lot of tumultuousness lately. But Paul, thank you so much for telling us about Plan B Paraguay and about Paraguay itself. We'll put all of your information in the show notes so people can reach out. They can watch your channel. If anybody, if you're on the fence or if you just want to learn more, his channel is excellent, and he has clients on there that he's interviewed that talk about every aspect of Paraguay. Yeah, man. Look, listen, we're gonna toast. We toast the goats on the show, so you're definitely a Paraguayan goat. So cheers to you, man. Appreciate you coming on the
Cheers.
Goat Show.
Cheers.
And
Cheers, guys. Thanks for having me. Yeah, so you'll share our details. Plan B Paraguay on YouTube and Twitter are our main channels. And if anyone wants to book a call with me and learn more, they can. But just to zoom out, like we can all agree the world's kind of a little bit shaky right now. So whether it's Paraguay or somewhere else, start thinking about a plan B because who knows what tomorrow brings.
exactly. All right, man. Well, thank you so much. Fresh. Before we get out of here, what do the people out there, maybe the future Paraguayans out there, what have they got to do?
You gotta like, subscribe, hit the bell, drop a comment, send it to your mom, your aunt, your uncle, your dad. Uh, Send it to everybody, man.